How to maximize multifamily renovation projects. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video. We're going to talk about rehabbing, renovating multifamily apartment buildings, specifically interior rehabs, and we're specifically talking about Class B, Class C, older product, not talking about new Class A product. We're not talking about adding amenities. We are typically talking about updating the interiors and being able to increase rents and therefore increase the value of the property. So what goes into it? How much should you rehab? What analysis you need to do beforehand. And this will help maximize the potential returns of your project. So we're going to go through a few questions that you should be asking yourself before you dive into any kind of rehab project. I see a lot of investors or general partners out there just, kind of blanket rehabbing everything or every interior to a certain level without actually going through the numbers and seeing if the data is there to support those projections. So here are a few of the questions to go through if you're considering a project that may require renovations. The first one is, does the property need to be renovated? Now, it might seem like an obvious place to start, but again, I've seen an overzealousness of general partners looking to just go in and rehab any property, that feels like it's going to increase the value, but that's not always the case. You need to look at the data and see, does the property actually need to be renovated? In many cases, it can be just cleaned up. It can be painted. There might not be a need to blow out the kitchen and redo all the flooring. So ask yourself, does the property need to be renovated? The second question is, what level of interior rehab is needed? Now, when we're talking about Class B, Class C interior rehab renovations, we're often talking about putting in a new kitchen. So we're talking about rent a grade. We're not talking about flipping a house, which a lot of newer multifamily investors are coming from. We're not putting in the highest level materials. We're putting in rent a grade materials, cabinets, maybe some lower end stainless steel appliances in the kitchen. We're doing vinyl flooring that can be easily replaced and is inexpensive and actually looks pretty good. We're painting and maybe the bathrooms as well. But that is the extent of what we typically do with interior rehabs in Class B and Class C properties, particularly of older vintages. But you need to ask yourself, how far even to that extent do you go? Look at properties in the area that are renting and see what is the top of the market in your area getting. If you're in a Class C area, for instance, and I was walking a property recently, and it was actually looked like it was primed to be rehabbed. The interiors were old and dated, but the rents were very low in the area. And if you look at other comps in the area, there were actually no renovated units. And what you might get in an area like that is, hey, if people do have a few $100s extra to spend on a nicer unit, they may instead choose to go live in a better area rather than have nicer finishes. So the last thing you want to do is invest all this time, energy, and money into a rehab project only to realize that it's not going to help increase rents the way you thought it would. So very important to find that sweet spot where you're renovating to a certain level that is required of the area, but not over rehabbing, because that could cause really a waste of funds. The next question is, what rents can you achieve by renovating the interiors? So this is really what gets into the analysis of these renovation projects. What rents are you currently getting, and what rents can you get if you do renovate these interiors? And the best way to look at it is through comps. Look at, if you have CoStar, obviously that's a good resource. But even if you want a free resource, look at apartments.com. See in your market or in the market of the building, what do current rents go for? Are you at market rents for the current condition of the properties? Or, are you under rented? Maybe that may be the value add where you bring rents up to market rent and don't necessarily need to have rehabs done to the property. Now look at the upper end of the market. If you were to renovate it, look at what the comps are showing, both in terms of market price for renovated units, but also the level of rehab that these landlords are putting out there. So what does that delta look like? Is it a $300 increase if you rehab per month per unit? Is it $500? Is it $50? All of that is very important information that's going to tell you whether or not it's worth even going forward with this renovation project. The fourth question is, what is the return on cost, and is this acceptable? So return on cost is a metric you may have heard before. It's exactly what it says. What kind of return are you getting on the cost you're putting in? So the way I like to think about this is completely separate, the building and the current rents you're getting from it to the rehab project and the additional rent you would receive by being able to get high rents with the renovated unit. So what I mean by that is, let's think of a simple example. And let's say that you have a 10-unit building, unrehabbed, you're getting $1,000 per month. Rehabbed, you calculate, hey, the comps are showing about $1,300 a month. So you're getting a $300 delta on a rehab unit versus a non-rehabbed unit. Now times that by 10 and you get 300 times 10. So you're at $3,000 per month extra that you get from a rehab unit. Now times that by 12 months and you end up getting $36,000 extra in rent. And I would argue most of that, if not all of that, is a $36,000 addition to NOI as well. If you think about it, your expenses aren't going up year on year because of the rehab units. The water bill should be the same. Insurance should be the same. Landscaping doesn't change. All of these things on the expenses side doesn't really change by being rehabbed. So this is almost complete profit on the NOI side. So you've got 36,000, and how much does it cost to do the renovations? So good question. I like to ballpark, and of course this depends where you're at, but if you're putting in rental grade finishes, we're talking about 1,000 square foot units, nothing huge. We're maybe looking at 10, 15, maybe 20,000 if you're in an expensive market and you're going for a really nice renovation. But typically that 10,000 to 15,000 mark is a pretty conservative and good bet. Let's say we're at 10,000 per unit. So you're putting in 100,000 for this complex and you're making 36,000 in extra income. That is a 36% return, which is a complete no-brainer. I mean, this is obviously an example that you would do this renovation every day of the week. Now, there might be some where you get a lot less. Maybe you only get a $150 bump in a renovated unit, and maybe you're spending $20,000 per unit. So you've got to do the math. And typically I like to say, where's the tipping point of where you should or shouldn't do the renovation? And I like to say, and this is not an official or a necessarily a hard and fast rule, but whatever your cap rate is, say you're at a 8 cap or a 6 cap, if your return on cost is higher than your cap rate, then you should do it. And again, think of it as a separate investment. The amount you're renovating is a function of the amount of rent you're going to get after that. So if you think about it separately, think about it as a separate investment, you can weigh up. It should always be better than the property investment itself. So I hope that makes sense. What is the return on cost and is it acceptable? That's kind of my way of determining it. Everyone else has their different means and methods, but that's a simple way that's worked well for me. And the last question I have here is, should you renovate the exterior and common areas? Now, this is often overlooked. The exterior and the common areas, we've only been talking about interior rehabs, and that's mainly because the tenant is going to live in the interior, obviously, and they're going to be paying rent based on how that interior is, if it's in a older condition or if it's recently rehabbed. So that's where you can make the most difference. And I do see a lot of product out there nowadays where operators are going in, they're renovating just the interiors. So the initial picture of the outside of the building, it looks, in some cases like quite a dump. And then you scroll through the interior pictures and it's like night and day. It's like a completely different building on the interior. For me personally, I'm always a big proponent of renovating the exterior as well. Doesn't mean you need to go crazy. Doesn't mean you need to, match even the interior condition. But it is important to keep the exterior and common areas. I'll include that, your hallways, your stairways, the entry vestibule, to at least in the same ballpark condition. First of all, it looks kind of strange when you see these, kind of run down exterior properties with beautiful interiors. Something just doesn't jive. Um, but also, you're talking about the tenant experience. People want to be proud of the home they come to. They don't, even if their interior is nice, if the rest of the property isn't, up to par, it just gives a bad vibe overall. So I always say, be cost conscious of the exterior renovations, but the aesthetics matter. Why people don't necessarily do exterior renovations, or why they're often forgot about, is because it's very difficult to correlate an increase in rent because of the exterior or common areas. You don't see ads out there being like, "Hey, we just renovated the exterior. We're increasing rents by $200." I think a lot of tenants would say, "No, I was fine with the way it is and paying $200 less." The same doesn't apply to interior renovations. Having said that, increases the curb appeal. It gives a good first impression to tenants, and when you look at exiting the building to prospective buyers, um, and you might be able to fill the vacant units quicker if people have a good impression of it. You may get more showings because that initial picture they see online looks clean, it looks elegant, and overall, you might even be able to get more rent. It's just hard to quantify exactly, unlike the interiors, which is very easy to quantify. So I'm a big fan of renovating the exteriors. Keep aside, even 5K per unit in the budget just for exteriors and common areas, and it can be just as simple as power washing the exterior. You don't need to go crazy. Could be painting the interior, adding lighting. Lighting is a huge thing in some of these Class B and C buildings that can absolutely make a world of difference. So that's all I have for today. How to maximize your multifamily renovation projects. Quick guide with questions you should be asking yourself if you're going into a project like this. And yeah, other than that, happy investing. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.